Hi, welcome back to Friend Crush. I'm your host, Amber Akilla, DJ, creative, producer, person, and shit talker. Welcome back. This is my podcast where I talk about stuff and things. Today's episode, I want to talk about why settling is bad for society. And I'm going to speak specifically, or more specifically, to women and anybody that is like seeking self empowerment, anybody that is hoping for progress in society, anybody that believes that, in feminism or just is looking to improve themselves and their life and their life satisfaction. Because actually, some people don't care. I'm not gonna lie. What I realized is that not everyone actually wants to get better. And maybe they like the idea of getting better, but they have no idea what it might actually take for them to do that. Or they're just waiting for life to direct them, and then they'll just figure it out from there. I believe personally in like a 50-50. Like if I'm working on myself and self reflecting and thinking about the possibilities of life, I'm hoping that life will present me with the right opportunities to challenge me or what was that quote that I heard? It was like, when you ask for courage, like say you're religious, I mean, whether you're asking God or the universe or whatever, like when you're asking for courage, you're not given courage. You're given a situation where you need to get courage, where you need to muster up courage, right? Courage isn't something that you just buy. It's something that is like innate within you that needs to be unleashed, unlocked. So I personally feel that you need to be one with the universe. You need to be connected to yourself, working on that self connection in order to understand how you're connecting with the people around you, the world around you. And this is what I have also realized the hard way, a constant journey. It is a constant and consistent practice that you must engage with in order for it to be effective. And because of the society that we live in, which maybe not enough people are asking enough questions, just taking things at face value and assuming that this is how the world is. This is how the world is by design, according to the people who have money and power, because hashtag late capitalism. And you don't have to, just because things are common doesn't mean that you have to do them, especially if you personally aren't comfortable with it. But I feel like the pressure of society can create an environment where people they can't even identify what they are and aren't comfortable with, because the pressure to conform and to fit in is so great that you will end up silencing your own authentic self, your own intuition, and your own desire for what you want in life. And it's something that can happen over time, something that you can get used to a point where, you might just reach a breaking point. That's why midlife crises are a thing. That's why existential crises are a thing, and mental breakdowns, etc., etc. And I know and communicate with so many people that are always talking about how they're constantly questioning the world around them and they find it so overwhelming. And it is overwhelming, but at the same time, at least you're asking questions, okay? Some people aren't asking any questions. And I find that really disturbing, because for me to just live the way that you are expected to live in today's modern society sounds and looks fucking depressing to me, personally. And it doesn't mean that you can't engage with modern society, but I feel like at least when you have an awareness of what's going on, then you can pick and choose how you want to participate. And I spoke about this I speak about this when I talk about like understanding that beauty standards exist and knowing where they come from, who benefits from profiting off them, and what it means for you, how it affects you, how it affects people around you, whatever, whatever. And then you can decide, okay, what do I actually want to engage with? What do I actually enjoy? Everybody is going to be different. Some people are going to say, fuck beauty standards. I don't care about makeup. I don't care about my physical appearance at all. And They just won't participate. Some people might think, you know what, beauty standards are fucked, but I still like looking pretty. I want to invest my time in it. But I understand that just because I'm participating in it doesn't mean that I'm going to get the benefits that it's trying to sell me, which is like, you know, feeling like I no longer have insecurities or feeling like I no longer have problems in life because I'm considered pretty to society standards, right? Like you can still enjoy it and understand your relationship with it. I think that's the most important thing. Like there's nothing wrong with having a corporate job or doing, you know, what is considered quote unquote right by whatever standards you have been indoctrinated with, because everybody basically has their own special little cocktail of pressures that they're given according to the family they grew up, the place they grew up in, the culture that they grew up in, whatever. So everyone's going to be different, right? You need to figure out what are the things that you were told you needed to do to be considered good and whether or not that actually resonates with you. If you are aware of this, then you can think, yeah, okay, I actually do want to get an education. Okay, I actually do want to work for this company. I see the value in the work that I'm doing because I know that getting money from this job means I'm going to have money to save up, to do another thing later down the line, whatever. Like, just awareness is key, okay? Acceptance is key. And then understanding the action that you're going to take is what's important. Not just the thing itself, the expectation, the standard, but your relationship with that standard. And if you don't question what's going on around you and you don't get in tune with what you want, then you actually have no standards. Your standards are being dictated by other people, by the ghost of your family's, your parents' voice in the back of your mind, of some person who said something mean to you 20 years ago, of an ad that you saw, of an Instagram post, of a random influencer. Like, for me, effective influencing isn't you want to be like me. It's you go be yourself. I only want to encourage people to get in tune with who they are. It's not about becoming more like me. It's becoming more like who you are supposed to be in this life. And that is something that's constantly shifting and evolving. And I feel like the way that we consume media, the way that stories are told, everything feels so static while feeling so frantic at the same time. At least to me, it's like, okay, you're being held to a past version of yourself because you're looking at like your pictures on Instagram or whatever. But at the same time, everything is shifting and moving around. Everyone's doing things, yet you're not allowed to really change. I don't know. Does that make any sense? But when you can acknowledge that like your authentic self is in constant motion, the way that life is in constant motion, and being able to be in tune with what you want at any given period and embrace that something that worked for you yesterday, something that worked for you a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago, might not work for you now, and that's okay. But what is working for you now? Let's figure that out and then do that. That's what getting in touch with your authentic self is about. Knowing what you want and making sure that your actions align with it. And it takes time and practice to develop getting in touch with that. And only when you start doing it will you actually understand the benefits that it will bring you. It's not something that you do one day and then you're like, cool, problem solved. It's like every day for a month, 3 months, 6 months. And then over time, you just get used to it and you get better at it. And for me, honestly, it's taken me the last year, more than the last year, to consciously work on that and then really get to a place where I feel like I've actually built a foundation that cannot be taken away from me. Something has been added to the foundation of who I am that can't be taken away easily, the way that it might have been before. I don't know if I've mentioned before, but like I'll talk about in another episode about like self-help. But if you're not consistent, then it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back without even realizing. I was kind of developing an awareness around this, but also like living in denial. Like I wanted to believe that because I've read certain books, because I believe certain things, that I was living a certain way. And for me, that's like having self-worth and having standards. But then when I reflected over the last year and a bit, I was like, yeah, I did have that sometimes. But then something would come along and I would be like, okay, you just do it for me. Someone would come along and I would think, maybe all that stuff's not so important. Maybe meditating every day is not so important. Maybe journaling is not so important. Maybe having time to myself or making sure I get enough sleep or having boundaries and not hanging out with people that I don't really like or talking to people that drain my energy. Maybe I can just do that for a bit and it'll be okay. No. You have to be consistent and you have to practice. And then you'll get to a point where you're just like, where no is so much easier for you, where having a boundary, having a standard is just base. Before or at first, it takes effort and it feels uncomfortable. You're like, oh, usually I would give my time to this person who emotionally drains me, who I know is going to just like chew at my ear, ask me for advice, tell me about all this toxic shit they're going through and then do nothing about it. And then they're going to come back to me next week or the week after and then complain again. Okay, just an example. Maybe you are happy to entertain that, but that is taking someone else's wants and going at the expense of your own. What are you getting out of this when you're talking to people like that? And we entertain it because I think, for me at least, I wanted to be a good friend and I did care about people like that. And I thought that I was caring for them by listening to them, by trying to be there for them, by allowing them to drain my energy. But it's lose-lose, okay? People like that, they don't appreciate the advice and the time that you give them because they just, I don't know what they want because I don't think like that. But people think like that. And if you, like, you feel the way you feel for a reason, and getting in touch with that is important in order to set a boundary, because if you don't set that boundary, they don't know that it's there. They are used to people being able to make time for their bullshit. They're used to you making time for their bullshit. So you need to be able to draw a boundary in order for them to understand, and you need to build a boundary, which is, sorry, I'm not available. Okay, let's talk for 20 minutes, but then I'm going to go. Okay, and now I need to go in 5 minutes. Wrap it up. I'm just using that as an analogy, but it could be like you're dating somebody who you just like made a commitment to, but the commitment is not adding up. You know, like you don't feel fulfilled from this relationship. You don't feel respected. And this person, you know, isn't really adding anything to your life. If anything, they're just bringing more problems. And you feel that because you made a commitment to them, that you need to honor it and you need to stick by. Like I think a lot of women, they just want to stick through until the bitter end, and they've been told that you need to give it your all, commit, help, invest, whatever, into a dead-end relationship. And what I've learned is that something doesn't have to be catastrophically bad for you to walk away. Being able to recognize at first, okay, I'm uncomfortable. Okay, you can give people the benefit of the doubt, you know. So things change, etc., etc. But if consistently over a period of time you are feeling not so great about something, and maybe that feeling is starting to compound, you have every right to look it straight on and think or say or do and address it in order to come to some kind of conclusion or solution so you can figure out how you can move on in a more positive and healthy way. Because what are you suffering for? There is no medal. This isn't this oppression, suffering Olympics. At the end of your life, you don't get a prize for putting everybody else's needs ahead of your own. But so often women are told that they are somehow going to be rewarded for this. And it just doesn't add up for me. I haven't seen it go well for anybody, including the person that they're being told to invest in, because people don't appreciate what they don't earn. And if like so much of life and learning is just moving through pain and suffering and discomfort, that is the only way that you're able to learn most of the time. Like you can read the textbook, you can read the manual over and over again, but until you start engaging with the machine, how are you going to know how it works? How are you actually going to troubleshoot? Like I've been thinking about how a lot of self-help is like buying a bunch of cooking books and never actually cooking. It's like a cycle that you can get into, people get into. They become so obsessed with learning about how to improve themselves, but they never actually confront those uncomfortable feelings. They think that just reading the book is the same as doing the work, but it's not. Just because you've read a bunch of recipe books doesn't mean that when you actually have to cook a meal, you know what to do. You have to physically get the ingredients, prepare them, cook the meal, learn, engage with the flavors, and improve over time, you can't read all the books and then make a Michelin star meal the first time you cook, right? You have to learn through doing. And that's the same as life. I don't understand how all of these principles that we apply to learning actual skills, people aren't being told to learn and apply to how they live. This same theory applies. There is no exception. And I don't know what it is that's made us think that there is. Probably aggressive marketing and advertising, thinking that we can buy things instead of doing things. Like the difference between having and being. Now that we're in modern society, consumerism is like teaching us that having is more important than just being. Having all these things is more important than being a person. Being a person with character and integrity. Anyway, so basically what I'm saying, settling is bad for society, because if you are not in tune with what your standards are, what your limits are, and everybody is going to be different, right? But you need to know what that is. And I know, like I know, that a lot of women and men, but women are the people that I speak to the most, majority of my audience, that we constantly deny how we feel, or in order to make other people comfortable. We deny how we feel to make other people comfortable. And I think men, on the other hand, they deny how they feel to make themselves comfortable. They avoid pain so that they don't have to admit that they fucked up, so that they don't have to admit or take responsibility for something that they promised to do, said they would do, didn't do, something that they're expected to do, haven't followed through on. They're avoiding pain because they are trying to maintain a level of comfort in the way that they see themselves in general. That's what men do. But women, they deny the pain that they experience to make other people comfortable. Okay, I feel like this guy is pressuring me to do something, but if I show that I have a boundary or I have a standard, then he might walk away, and I'm afraid of what that is going to mean for us. Or I'm feeling uncomfortable with my friend, but I care about my friend. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable, so I'm just going to sweep it under the rug. Let's not address. Okay? So generally, I think women deny their pain and their feelings to make other people comfortable. I'm fine, don't worry about it. Men deny their pain, their feelings to make themselves comfortable. Regardless, it's bad. Not healthy, okay? Very important to understand what your limits are so that you can live authentically. And everybody is different. And some people are going to vibe, other people are not going to vibe. And that's okay, that's just life. But if you're having bad vibes with somebody in your life because you're not acknowledging the pain or the discomfort that you feel that comes at the expense of your best interests, then that needs to be addressed. And it's going to be hard, but trust me, when you know what those limits are and you're living your life according to them and adjusting and being aware of them, you will be free. It will make your life so much easier. Like, it's hard at first, but then it makes your life so much easier. Like, for me, what I've learned is if I get asked to do something and I don't want to do it and I have no obligation to, being able to say no, where in the past I might have just done it because someone's asking me and I just want to people please. Being like, saying no at first might be scary to me and uncomfortable to me, but that person is usually prepared to get a no from me. And even if, it's a bummer for them, it's like, well, I don't have to take an L for you the same way that they don't have to take an L for me, right? So why am I giving away more of myself than they're willing to even offer in return, according to my standard? And as I've gotten used to being able to just say, no thanks, I don't want to go to that party, I don't want to do that job that doesn't resonate with me, isn't really bringing me any material or like mental benefit. I don't want to go on that date. I don't want to eat that food. I don't want to whatever. My life is just so much easier. I don't want to wear that. I don't want to buy that. I don't care what that person thinks. I don't care what that person, it just makes life so much easier because you're not comparing yourself to other people anymore. You're just comparing yourself to you. And I think already, I generally I'm not very competitive with others. I'm usually competitive with like a former version of myself or a version of myself that I want to be. But even more so now, I'm just like, I really don't give a fuck. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. Maybe tomorrow I will. We'll deal with it then. Maybe I like it today and I don't like it tomorrow. Whatever. The past is the past. But getting in tune with that is so important because settling is bad for society. You're made to think that you should be sacrificing your best interests in order for the greater good, in order for the people around you to be more comfortable, to benefit. Like there's something that you have that other people don't, and that you can offer them this thing that they're missing, whatever, you're going to make their life easier. No. People don't appreciate things that they don't earn. And they can always ask somebody else. They can always ask someone else, but they asked you. And if you didn't set up that boundary, then there's no reason for them to enforce it for you, because from where they stand, there's no boundary there. I was talking to a friend about a job that she got asked to do, and it was like a 3-day job, and they told her like, there's going to be all these people involved, it's going to be this and that. They got put in touch with the producer, and the producer's like, yeah, it's going to charity, like blah blah blah. But like people are working pro bono, so like, would you be able to do it pro bono? Like asking her to work for free for 3 days. And she was telling me about it, and then I was like, 3 days? You might have to take off work to do this other job. For what? Like, even if it has some connection to a charity, a lot of the things that you've mentioned here are all for-profit businesses that are attaching to a charity to improve their brand image. So they're ultimately going to be making money from whatever campaign they're doing. So you deserve to be paid. And I understand why the producer would ask you to work pro bono. Doesn't mean that I think it's okay, but I know that they would ask that because they would think, maybe she'll say yes, and then we won't have to pay her and use that money for something else. So unless you set that boundary and you say, sorry, can't work for free, this is my rate, or let's talk about how we can make this work because I'm interested, but I can't work for free, then they'll find the money. And if they really don't have the money and you can't do it for free, maybe they'll find somebody else, but that's not your problem. You are doing a job, so you deserve to be compensated. And it depends on the scale, it depends on a number of factors, but it's like she's obviously not comfortable working for free in this context, understanding the scale of the job, so she should be able to ask if she can get paid. Or she should be able to say she doesn't want to do it if she's not going to get paid. And maybe in a different context, if the job was smaller and whatever, okay, yeah, happy to work for free for a few hours if it's for a good cause or whatever, or just to do it as a favor. Like each scenario has to be addressed according to the context that it lives in. And I think a lot of the times we just want like a blanket answer. Like if someone asks you this, then you say this. But life is just more complicated than that. There's no easy formula. And in talking about boundaries, I mentioned in a TikTok video, I was thinking about how there's a huge difference between drawing a boundary and building a boundary. When we're learning about our personal boundaries, sometimes we realize that we didn't really have any. We were just making it up as we went along. And what I have learned, or one theory or perspective that I've learned, is that your feelings are indications of your boundaries. When you feel uncomfortable, when you get a feeling, sensation in your body in response to something, that's information that you should be listening to and getting in tune with, and understanding like what your mind tells you about how your body feels. Sometimes things are lost in translation. That's why doing things like mindfulness and meditation help you to create more space between your brain and how it responds to your feelings. Because it's not like, I think with like internet self-help or whatever, when people say like, your feelings are valid, that's somehow been translated into, okay, I feel angry, so I'm going to be angry. I'm going to say mean things. I feel slighted, I'm going to say things in order to, like, you don't have to be reactive. You need to learn how to respond. So I try to create as much space as I can between the way that I feel and the thoughts around it. And sometimes it can take me hours or a day to really process how I'm feeling. I need to think about it, maybe write it out, sleep on it, come back the next day and think, okay, this is how I actually feel. Not like, devastating or like enraging. Sometimes you just have to let it pass and consider carefully what you want to do. That's what your feelings being valid means to me. It doesn't mean like, oh, well, I'm sad, so I'm going to take out my sadness on all the people around me. It might be, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling this way? Is it because of what this person has said to me? Or is it because it's triggered something else inside of me? Or is it because of a situation that I'm in? Or I'm angry. Why am I angry? It's because I feel like this boundary is being crossed. Have I communicated this boundary? Maybe not. Something that I should have done earlier, something I can do now. Or I'm feeling angry because a boundary has been crossed for me and I have actually communicated that previously. And the fact that they continue to try to cross it indicates that the vibes are off. Maybe I need to take a step back. Whatever. So, learning that you have boundaries. And again, internet self-help is like, you have boundaries, have standards, bad bitch, blah, blah, blah. Don't take any shit, etc., etc. Yeah, that's easy. That's easy to say. Very, very easy to say. Very easy to repost. Very hard to do when push comes to shove, when you're in fight or flight. So when you're just talking about how you're a bad bitch, how you have standards, don't take any shit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, that's drawing boundaries. You're drawing a line. So imagine your mental space, well, how I imagine myself and my mental space is like a property almost. It's like a property. And if I'm drawing a boundary, then it's like drawing a line in the sand around your property. Some people can see the line. Some people can't see the line. Some people will acknowledge it. Other people will pretend it's not there. And they'll just say, and like, what's stopping anyone from breaking into your property if you've just drawn a line, okay? Just saying that you have boundaries means absolutely nothing. So building boundaries would be when you're trying to build a fence. It takes time to build a fence. You got to start with the stick part and then build the cross part or whatever, the gate. And, it takes time. So when you're building boundaries, at first, people might be like, okay, whatever. They're going to test you. They're going to see what your weaknesses are. Okay, can I still cross anyway? Because people want what they want from you, okay? And different people are going to put in different amounts of energy to see what it takes to get you to fold, right? It's like a guy who's like pesky on getting you to like have sex without a condom or something, or like trying to get you into bed. You might say no, and he's just going to think, okay, well, what does no really mean? And that's the difference. You saying no is drawing that line. You being able to walk away and exit that situation so that he knows that no means no, as safely as you can. That's you building that boundary. He sees, okay, I can't push her as far as I would like to, or as much as I feel entitled to, whatever. So when you're building that fence, at first people might still be able to step over it. But with more practice over time, the fence is improving in its structure, in its sturdiness, in its strength. And then it's much harder for people to cross that boundary. And if it's something that, certain people, depending on how close you are, will have access to what's behind that, then you can open the gate for them. You can unlock it and let people in. But your property isn't a free-for-all. It's not an open house party. What is that what it's called? I haven't been to a house party in so long. Open house? Whatever. So think about the difference between saying you have boundaries and then actually building them. So saying I have boundaries might be like, I don't want to talk to people on the phone for more than 20 minutes during the week because I'm busy and it just emotionally drains me. Building the boundary is when my friend calls me and wants to complain about something or talk about something. And even though I want to help them, I don't have more than 20 minutes, but I stay on the phone for 2 hours. okay, well, I wasn't very good at building that boundary, was I? I might have said it to myself in my head, I might have said it to them. But if I didn't say, okay, I'm really sorry, I've got to go, they're just going to keep talking. They're going to keep seeing how much they can get out of you. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. Like, it's not about good and bad. It's just about what is right for you, what feels healthy to you, what protects your mental space and your mental peace. So, learning the difference between saying that you have boundaries and actually having them, drawing the line and building the fence. And back to my original point, which is that settling is bad for society. Having boundaries is also like having standards. It's like easy to say that you have standards, but hard to really like assess your reality and see what is and isn't meeting your standards. So, oh my God, especially with boys when it comes to heteronormative dating and women and men. Women want to say they have standards, but then, you catch feelings for a guy and red flags appear. Suddenly, your standards are gone. It's very hard to like somebody, care for somebody, platonic or romantic, see red flags for what they are, and make decisions accordingly. That shit is fucking hard. Okay, like I'm not trying to say that it's easy, which is why there is a difference between saying that you have standards and actually enforcing them. And, sometimes people's standards, they're a little bit crazy, unhinged, maybe not so necessary, but sometimes they need to be tested in order to figure out, okay, is that a reasonable standard to have or not? And if you never test it, then you will never know. I've spoken to women who are purely on birth control just so that their partner can have unprotected sex. And that's okay in principle, but for some women, they're getting like copper IUDs put in, and then like they can still feel it when they're having sex and it's causing them pain. They can still feel it on a day-to-day basis. And why do you need to be in constant discomfort so that a guy can just not wear a condom? Like, that's worse than the guy wearing the condom. I'm sorry, at men, I won't be able to feel what it feels like for you, but I'm almost positive that a woman having a piece of copper stuck up her uterus and feeling that on a day-to-day basis is more uncomfortable than a guy being able to have sex with a condom on. So this is why not having standards is bad for society. And now the way that women are oppressed is so subtle and insidious, and it's on such a personal level that it's almost unidentifiable that it is oppression, or that it is like being expected to sacrifice yourself for the benefit of men. And when I think about women that are in a constant state of discomfort, I've heard of a lot of women that have been on the pill. It makes them feel insane or depressed, or they gain weight and they feel uncomfortable, or they have a lot of side effects from it. You don't need to do that just so that a guy isn't at risk of becoming a father, especially when there are other options available that don't require as much of a long-term investment as being on birth control is. And I'm not telling people what to do. I'm just trying to create a analogy or paint a picture of how oppression works now, because that is a woman taking an L for a man's benefit, and she doesn't need to do that. It can be win-win, and men need to learn, people in general need to learn that they can't expect people to go against their best wishes to make them comfortable or for their benefit, or they can't feel entitled to that, or they can at least understand that there are consequences when they behave that way. Because what I've learned as well is that talk is cheap. Talk is cheap when you're being spoken to, and talk is cheap when you're talking to other people. Because if you're just telling somebody, this is my boundary, this is my standard, that doesn't mean anything if when push comes to shove, you don't build that boundary. You don't enforce that standard. And the easiest way to tell somebody or to show somebody that you're serious is to have consequences for your mistreatment, basically. And that's going to be different for everybody, you know? Some people can be spoken to very rudely over a long period of time until they walk away. Other people, not so much. But you don't need to feel bad about what your boundary, what your standard is. And you really need to get in touch with where it's at, what it is, what they are, so that they can be enforced. Like, when I'm thinking about the way that women are being spoken to on dating apps, I'm just like, the fact that men continue to speak to women in such disrespectful ways on these dating apps shows me that they're getting away with it to some degree, and that men are somehow successful, maybe not all the time, but how could they keep coming back with that attitude? Or they at least adapt and find other ways to go around these boundaries most of the time, instead of really being able to honor them. So I feel that women need to people need to collectively empower themselves individually, get in tune with what their boundaries and their standards are, so that we can be treating people with respect and moving forward as a society. Because I'm sick of this shit. I don't want to see men speaking to women in such disrespectful and derogatory ways and getting away with it. And, you know, I made like a TikTok or something about what you can say to a guy that's being presumptuous. And I just think it's like, why even bother? I mean, I have so much to say about dating apps in general, which I'll save for another episode. But it's like, don't reply. You don't need to. Then that sends a clearer message than anything. Because when you start, okay, say a guy comes at you with some hectic energy and you reply to be like, are you serious? Or what does that even mean? Okay, he got what he wanted, which was a response. It's not about like what the response is. It's the fact that you responded at all. If a guy's coming at you with whack, inappropriate, disrespectful energy, block, move on. That sends a clearer message than anything. Imagine if it was the other way around. You sent a gross message to somebody, and instead of responding to you, which is what you sending the message to them in the first place was aiming for, they just were like, oh, they just blocked you. You'd be like, damn. That gives you more pause to consider your approach maybe wasn't appropriate than having a back and forth and having someone convince you like it was inappropriate because of these reasons, because of that reason, because I felt that. They don't know you, they don't care. The stakes are too low at the beginning of those interactions. Anyway, not having standards is bad for society. And this brings me to Gandhi's quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. I think that's what he meant. Have standards, have boundaries, get in touch with who you are, get in touch with what those things are, and get ready to practice building those boundaries instead of just drawing them. And it's going to be hard, but be prepared for it to be hard. Know that you will benefit at the end of the day. Because what do you get out of self-sacrificing? What do you get out of not putting your best interests first? Okay, it doesn't mean you have to put your best interests over anybody else's. It just means these are my best interests. Are we vibing or are we not vibing? If we vibe, great. If we're not vibing, bye. Simple as that. But it seems so complicated. But once you do it, you're just like, oh, why have I not been doing this the whole time? I believe in you. Don't let anybody tell you that what you want for yourself is unrealistic, you know? If you're really putting in the work to make it happen. At the end of the day, it's your life. So make sure that you're living it the way that you want to. And know that it's not going to come overnight if you need to be making changes. Or you're constantly having to make changes because everything is changing all the time. And that's okay. You know, when you embrace it and you accept it, then it just makes life so much easier. You're not constantly pushing against a standard or an expectation that you're not willing to accept. It's like, okay, it's there. Am I going to participate or not? What am I going to do instead? What's going to make me feel better? What's going to be healthier for me? You know, like ask yourself those questions and really figure out what those answers might be and be ready to move in the direction of your truth and your authenticity, you know? Anyway, thank you for listening. That's all I have to say for today. You can follow me on Instagram at amberakilla, at friend.crush, and on TikTok at amberakilla. Send me questions and comments. I really, really appreciate it when people send feedback. It reminds me that I'm not speaking into the void, but that someone somewhere is listening to me. And yeah, keep doing your best. Go be a better person. Tell your friends and family you love them. Stay hydrated, and I'll speak to you soon.